Hey, this is me testing. Hey, this is me testing. Hey, this is me testing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the Signals Music live stream is about to start because it looks like I have some of you back, and I'm pretty sure I have audio this time. So I humbly apologize for my technical difficulties from earlier. It sounds like Open Broadcast Software decided to just completely drop 100%, just decided to forget that I have a Focusrite to do my audio. But it looks like it's coming through. I hear that some of you are back already. Janssen, John, GG, and I just got a text from one of you, Michael Varney, and he's mentioning that the URL looks a little weird, but you know what? It looks like we're all here. So hello, everybody. We made it. So because we spent all that time with all that nonsense, what we're going to do is we're going to dive right into things, okay? We're going to try right into answering your questions. And the first question is from John, who is in the chat. And John's question is, Well, first off, let's listen to John's track, okay? Because John has sent in an excellent little track here. We're going to take a listen to it with the leads first. So we're going to start off by listening to this with the leads. And it's a chiptunes track. So let's take a quick listen here. And the first part of John's question is about writing intros. All right. Now, this question is going to not be answered very well unless we can also answer this part. Because you want to write a song that loops. All right. Let's listen to the loop. All right. And you can hear we're repeating back to where we started right now. So the first part of John's question, first off, I love what you're doing. I love chiptunes. Who doesn't love chiptunes? And the first thing is, well, the intro totally depends on what kind of song you're writing. So an intro that, let's say you have a piece of music that has to loop, like a video game. Well, it might be a good idea to have your intro just be like a watered down version of the chord progression. So maybe like there's no melody. Maybe you keep the groove, the bass drum, the synthesizers, the drums. Maybe that happens for 4 entire rounds, and then the melody comes in. And that way, when it loops, it's not like you're just thrown into a melody. I'm going to give you an example of this. This is some of the earliest work I had ever done as a professional composer, when I finally said, hey, you know what? I can go out and make some money making music. And one of the jobs I got was on a website that I believe now is called Upwork, but at the time it was called Elance. And it was to make some video game music for a African safari themed puzzle game for children. All right. And so obviously we need some like engaging music that won't scare the kids and keeps them engaged. So I made a bunch of different songs for these people, and you'll notice that every single one of them kind of has this similarity where we start off just introducing you to the beat, and it's like an intro. That way you're not just thrown right into the melody. So take a listen here. We're starting off with just drums and beat. And now we get our melody. Right? And this is like an A section. Just like you, John, I decided to write an A section and a B section because for video game loops, I think that's a really good idea. So we're on the A section right now. And then, of course, we have to go to a B section. So this B section comes in, and then when it closes out, I want you to hear how the loop happens, because you're asking about how the loop works. How do you loop something? B section. And then right here, and then our loop happens. Right? So I know the loop wasn't precise. I think my DAW is a little funny there. So just to kind of recap what I'm doing here, I have an A section, I have a B section, and then the very last thing before the loop hits is like everything disappears, and all we're left with is drum fill. And then when the loop comes back, you're left with groove. So it's like, you know, thinking about the end of your song has to tail into the beginning of your song where you're doing this looped kind of music. The other example I want to give you for a loop is the song we played for the intro here, the song that I wrote called Ham and Walnut Jello. So once we get to the final chord progression, we have a 2 chord, and then we do a tritone substitution, and we stay here. So in that case, all we're doing is we're finding our tension chord. In this case, it should be the dominant chord, but we've substituted for something that's a tritone away. And then we just hang out on that chord. So a simpler version would be just don't resolve right away, okay? Here would be like a simple approximation of it, okay? A major, D major, E major is your chord progression. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. On your loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, stay there, and then you've got time for a loop. So just prolonging the amount of time you spend on your last chord, which is probably going to be a dominant chord or some sort of resolutory chord, that's going to basically give you an opportunity to make that loop function a little bit more comfortably, okay? So I think that if you're gonna write an intro with a loop song, you really have to be thinking about the outro to your song, so it's a little different. For any other kind of song, I think about the intro as being like, you know, what's your intro supposed to be? Is it supposed to be an introduction? Is it supposed to scare them? Are you supposed to throw them right into it? So a lot of times, John, my intros are pared down. It's like, okay, we have, if this is the full verse, if the verse has drums and bass and singing and da-da-da-da, what if I just take 3 of those elements? That might be my intro, you know? Or what if I take the main chord progression and I just play it like this? No drums, no nothing, just one instrument, you know? Later on, your song's gonna be crazy and wild and have all those chords in it. But at the beginning, you can pare it down to just a chord progression. So that's what I think of with intros. Now, the last part of John's question is about theory and writing. Now, John had suspected or tried to initially write in A Lydian. And now that they have written this, they're assuming they did not write in A Lydian. You're exactly right, okay? So let's talk about what key you're actually in and why you're not in A Lydian, all right? What I'm hearing here, just so you know, John, is I'm pretty much hearing you in the key of C sharp minor, okay? The first chord in your song here is a C sharp minor chord. Let's take a listen here, and let's listen to it without the lead now. So now we're just gonna listen to the, just the chords, all right? So we've got those first 2 chords. I'm hearing C sharp minor, A major, and then I'm hearing, I believe it's an E major 7. Yeah, and then, so basically you've got a C sharp minor, A major, E major 7, and then it sounds like a B, an inverted B. So this is all pure key of C sharp minor or the pure key of E major. If you think of E as your tonal center, which I really don't, I think of this as being my home base for this entire song. So, yeah, why isn't it A Lydian? Well, think about, you know, A Lydian would have to be the same thing as the E major scale. So you're using the same notes as A Lydian. You are using the same notes as A Lydian. But why isn't this A Lydian? Well, A isn't my home. You know, this song doesn't start on A. It doesn't end on A. A isn't the most important chord in your progression. Even though you used all the notes of the A Lydian scale, guess what? The A Lydian scale is the exact same notes as the B Mixolydian scale. It's the same thing as the C sharp minor scale. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as 7 different scales. All that matters is what have you chosen as your tonal center. And guess what you've chosen as your tonal center? The 6th chord, right? That's the home of minor. So this is our home. We're using the chords of the E major scale. The key signature is E major. Here are the chords. These are all the chords you're using. But you didn't start here, and you didn't focus on here, and you didn't hang out here, so we can't sound like Lydian. Right now, I'm creating a Lydian sound. Right now, we're getting Lydian, because there's no C sharp minor, there's no E. Right? So I'm creating that Lydian sound because I'm in the key of E major, but I'm not focusing on the 1 chord, the 2 chord, the 3 chord, the 6 chord, the 5 chord. I'm focusing on the 4 chord. The 4th chord is the home of Lydian. So you've written a very nice chord progression, John, in the key of C sharp minor. All right? Yes, and I am so apologetic to Hunter for missing the first part of this. There's going to be a lot of confusion on this stream. But, you know, things happen, and now I know to check that for next time. So, John, excellent questions. I hope that helps out. A lot of people, just so you know, I wouldn't feel too bad about the fact that you tried to write something in A Lydian and you didn't. You know what you still did? You wrote cool music. I really don't care what key it's in. I do care if you know the right key. I don't want you to mislabel it. But this is the great thing about learning music theory. Even if you don't absorb the lesson correctly 100%, it still puts you on the path of making something and experimenting and exploring and doing things. That's why studying music is so important, is because, like, hopefully you take the thing you're studying and you try to apply it. Who cares if you apply it correctly? You know, like, that would be, you know, fortunate if immediately you absorb the concept. But what's more important is you go out and make music. And even if you do something wrong, you can learn from that. And then eventually you'll get that lesson. So I really like this question. Hopefully that answers here for you. A lot of people have trouble with the modes. I see Bowtie is asking, is it harder to make the tonal center feel like home for different modes? Bowtie, I certainly think so. I think the hardest mode to preserve outside of Locrian is Lydian. I think Lydian is very delicate. You know, here it is again. right? So we're in A Lydian, but listen to how it's like a bubble that will burst. As soon as I play an E major chord, right? As soon as I play that chord, it's like, oh, that's where I was supposed to be the whole freaking time. I'm finally home. I was lost. I didn't know where I was. I was floating up in the clouds in an ethereal bubble, right? I was speaking to cosmic entities and flying through space. And then finally, this is where I belong. So I do think that Lydian is the most delicate of the tonalities, the most unstable of them. And I think Locrian is similar just because it's diminished. You can't do anything with Locrian. We've already discussed that plenty of times on my channel. Yeah, that answers that. Jared saying that the URL on Patreon finally updated. So I don't know, something's going on goofy with that URL. But it looks like most of you made it here. I still apologize for all that. So. Okay, and yeah, John, do try to write something in Lydian. Remember, the secret is to just make that chord feel like home. The best way to make a chord feel like home is spend a lot of time on it, okay? So that is a lengthy answer on that. We're going to move on to a question from Tams. This is going to be another lengthy answer because this is a really complicated question, and I want to give a very thorough answer, all right? So Tams is asking about something I said in my video on modal mixture for dreamy and epic melodies. I said something like, if a chord is going to hang around for a while, you can move off your tonal center and develop a different flavor. And then the question here is about treating secondary dominance as not only a certain way, but basically treating a chord like as its own kind of thing when it pops up. And then there's some more parts to this question, but I don't think I need to go through all of this. I think what I need to try to do is answer this more specifically. And here is how I would like to answer this, okay? So the question is, let's kind of recap. If we have a borrowed chord, the question is, what can we do with that borrowed chord? And is there one way to do it, or are there multiple things to do with it? So I want to talk about 3 different possibilities here that we could do for a borrowed chord. Or just really 2 possibilities. I think it boils down to just 2, all right? And the way I'll do this, let's make this really simple. I'm just going to do like a clean little metronome, and I'm going to play an A major chord, all right? Or actually, we were just in E major. No. We'll do E, because we were in E. So here's E. And actually, I'll do a slow pattern. Right, and here's an A. Here's a 2. And actually, I'm going to do 1, 5, 2, 4. That'll be the progression I play. 1, 5, 2, 4 is E, B, F sharp minor, A. I want to end with an A for a specific reason. So here's E. There's the 2. So there's my chord progression, all right? And this is what we're going to experiment with borrowed chords. But right now, it's just E major. It's all in the key of E major. The one chord we're going to add here that's not in the key, the borrowed chord we're going to use, is the minor 4, all right? In the key of E major, the 4 chord is A. If I want to borrow from my parallel minor, okay, that would be the key of E minor. And the 4th chord in the key of E minor is actually an A minor. So I'm borrowing this A minor from E minor. Even though I'm in the key of E major, I'm borrowing the 4th chord from A minor. And we're going to sneak it in there just at the end. So now I'll record the second part of this here. Here's E major. It's a 1, 2, and actually, you know what? We're just going to stick with this progression. We don't even need the first one. I think that was redundant. What I want to experiment with here is how do we accommodate the A minor chord, all right? Let's see if we can kind of pull something up here. So we're in E major, right, which is E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp. And by the way, these are more questions that I have to get to here today, these ones that you're seeing. That's E major. Here's E minor. E, F, G, A, B, C. Oh, I'm sorry, F sharp. Oops. Those are the difference between the 2 scales. The chord I'm bringing in all of a sudden is an A minor, which uses the notes A, C, and E. So over this A minor chord, okay, this A minor chord, Think about this for a second. This is the chord I'm bringing in. Which of these notes is illegal in our initial key? We were in this key up here. Here's our parent key. We're introducing this chord. Hopefully you can see that only one of these notes is a bad note. The only bad note in this chord is the C. C is the only note in this chord that is actually out of place with my initial scale. Do you follow? So when this chord comes up, we clearly need to make sure that C and C sharp do not clash, which is why what I'm going to do when this A minor chord comes up, I'm going to stay in E major, stay in E major, stay in E major, but when A minor comes up, I'm going to take my C sharps and I'm going to make them C naturals instead, okay? Because I want C's, all my C sharps to become C naturals here, and it can help me accommodate this chord. That is one thing I could do. Now ask yourself, if I play this scale, but the C becomes natural, what do I get? Does that ring a bell to you? Let's play it. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C, D sharp, E. Is that a scale you know? That's not a scale that's very, very popular, okay? That's not a common scale. I don't think I've ever taught a single lesson on that scale. But that's the scale I'm going to go to because it's the closest possible. It's all I have to do. All I have to do is say, hey, I'm just going to change this one note. I'm going to change this one note. So at its core, this is what modal mixture is. At its very core, you're only introducing a chord that's out of key. And chances are that chord only includes one note you need to accommodate. So the simplest thing you can do is just shift one note of your parent scale. And when you do that, you might end up with a scale you recognize. You might end up with some exotic scale like harmonic major. Okay, that's what I was just playing right there. So there's a lot of different things that could happen, but the simplest thing you could do, the easiest thing you could do is just say, hey, I'm going to play the E minor scale because I know that this chord derived from E minor. So instead of thinking about just changing one note, I could just shift scales. Now you might think that's harder. You might think that's easier. Totally personal preference. But really, you could pick any single scale that includes that note. So let's listen to this now. I've been talking for a long time. Let's just try to listen to this. Over that one chord, what I'll do is I'll switch from E major to E minor, and that way we can hear that, okay? So let's listen here. If I do this, E major scale, let's listen. At the end, okay? So did you hear what I did there over that last chord? I played the full E minor scale. Let's hear it again. Just to make it simple, I'll just go up the scale, so that way there's nothing fancy. Just... That's the E minor scale, but then we resolve on an E major chord, so I'll have to play a G sharp. So we're going to hear this again. The full E major scale, and then the full E minor scale. E major. E major. E minor. Back to E major. Now I didn't have to do that. Like I said, there's only one note I really need to accommodate, and that's the C's to C sharp. So let's look at our E major scale. All right, here's a way I could play E major. I want to play it like this. And the C sharps in here, where are the C sharps? Well, they're right here. I only have one, so I only have to change one note. I need to change it from there to this. So now I get this cool scale, which is actually going to be probably a mode of melodic minor or something like that. Probably like Mixolydian flat 6. Maybe that's what I was initially doing, a mode of melodic minor. If I think about it on E, yeah. I don't know, I'm a little confused. Either way, all I know is that I'm taking the E major scale, turning all my C sharps to C. That's the only chord that I actually have to change, all right? So here's E major. Pure E major. And now I'll change that C sharp. Right? So in that case, we're really only changing the closest note. I want you to think about this. Think of a great example of this is going to be in Buddy Holly by Weezer. I was about to say The Weezer, which is maybe one of the funniest ways you could ever call that band, The Weezer. So Buddy Holly is ooh, I look just like Buddy Holly. Oh, and you're Mary Tyler Moore. But in the pre-chorus, they've got the ooh, and I know you're mine. Ooh, and I know I'm yours. Ooh, that's why, and that's of all time. So if you think about what's going on there, the most classic, the best guitar lick that, I mean, I'm not a huge Weezer fan, but come on, that is the best guitar lick that has been written in the last 30 years. And if you follow what's going on there, they've stayed in the key of A major. All these notes, that's the notes of A major. A, B sharp, B, or A, B, C sharp. Those are the first 3 notes of the A major scale. And before, we were using this note, F sharp, because that's in the key. But then all of a sudden, they borrow the 4 chord. So all the F sharps need to become Fs. They could have done, but they didn't. That's not as good. That's what and that's how. That's in pure minor. Now we've gone to the full parallel minor, as opposed to keeping, which is just awesome. It is absolutely awesome. So hopefully that expounds a little bit on your question. I think that's what you were getting at, Tams. And what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of ways to do it. And if the chord is there for a very long time, then it's like a modulation. That's what I want you to think of. If that's what you were thinking about when I was talking about hanging out there for a long time, I mean, if a chord's there long enough, you can just call it our new tonal center. And if that is what you want to talk about, ask me again for the next live stream, and we'll do it again. But I do want to get through all of the questions, and since I started so late today, and I'm starting with some really, really heavyweight questions, I want to get around to all of them. So the next question from Patreon is going to be from Michael Varney, but I did get some from the email first. So I want to talk about this question from Carter first. Carter has a really, really simple question for me to answer, because I think we've already been talking about this. So I think we're all on the same page to answer this. The question is the diatonic modes and renumbering. So Carter here used to be thinking of G, D minor, C, and F as a confusing 5, 2, 1, 4 in C. But now Carter's understanding the value of thinking and reordering your stuff as your numerals, right? Reordering your numerals. So the 1 chord is actually the 1 chord of Mixolydian. Like thinking of Mixolydian as a key, right? That's a really important thing. Or thinking of, Dorian as a key. Very, very helpful stuff. But now here's the question. Renumbering has locked me into a mindset that the first chord is likely the tonal center or the home bass. I have a hunch that is wrong. There are 2 easy songs that we can use to illustrate. John Hiatt's Cry Love, F, C, G, A minor. Let's listen to that progression. F, C, G, A minor. I know it's not right, but using my first letter rule, I would be inclined to say that this is an F Lydian. Exactly, right? That's what a lot of beginners are going to think. A lot of people that first start realizing, they say, hey, I started on the 4 chord. That means I'm in Lydian. But here's the problem. And Carter has already basically solved, so I think I'm just going to confirm your suspicions, Carter. Carter's saying on a looper, it feels more like C Ionian, right? All right, or A minor. So you've solved it. It's not about the chord you start on. It's about the chord that feels like tonal center, right? Why doesn't F feel like tonal center here? We're in the key of C, right? Or A minor. So why doesn't F feel like tonal center? Well, as soon as I'm done with F, which could be a tonal center, as soon as you play it, we're like, okay, you gave us the tonic chord right away. Think of it this way. When you play all these chords, your brain, whether you like it or not, whether you're aware of it or not, your brain is detecting 7 different notes, okay? It's detecting 7 full notes. And when your brain detects 7 full notes, it's going to immediately default to the major scale. It's going to be like, where's my home? Where's my tonic? Where's my tonic? And if you give the brain any hint of where the tonic is, the brain's going to be like, I found you. And now I'm going to keep you in mind as the tonic. So the goal of writing modally is to avoid that thing from ever happening. Don't let the brain ever find the real tonic. And if the brain does find the real tonic, you got to get out of it right away. So we could turn this into a Lydian progression. The progression you're talking about here, Carter, we could turn this into Lydian. It would just be very hard. We'd have to do something like this. First off, let's play an F and stay there for a long time. All right? All right? And then let's throw in some of the notes that make Lydian really, what's a really common note over Lydian? You know, it would be the augmented fourth, which in this key is going to be the B natural, right? So can I get a B natural in? I can. Right? I can get a B natural pretty easily. So I'm creating this Lydian sound. The problem is that C major is my tonic. And as soon as I play C, it's going to feel like... But did you see how I took you away from C so fast? You didn't even have time. You didn't even have time to hang on to C major as the tonic. I'll do it again. I'm going to give you the C, but then the G and the A minor. Right? So that chord progression could be an F Lydian if you can somehow find a way to make F feel like the tonal center. Likewise, it could also be an A minor if you could find a way to make A minor feel like home. How do you do that? There's a lot of ways, but I think spending time on it is the most promising way for it, all right? We went through this not that long ago with, this is a very, very common question, Carter, and I think you're on the right path. I think you're 100% on the right path. And we could go through this with all of the chord progressions that you have mentioned. So the secret is not what chord you start on. It's what is the tonal center? What is the tonic chord? There's one more chord progression I was thinking of. A lot of chord progressions in a lot of minor-based EDM songs will be like 6, 7, 1 in minors. F, G, minor. All right, so F, G, A minor. F, G. Obviously, I started this on F, but where do we spend the most time? I don't know what key I'm in. We spend most time here on A minor. That's why your brain feels that as home. The song that's coming to mind is Mother by Danzig. And those, right, well, that then song actually starts on the A minor. But you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of them are just 6, 7, 1, 6, 7, 1, but you stay long enough on 1, 1 feels like home. So it's about what feels like home. Why does it feel like home? That's a good thing to meditate on. But I think the home chord feels like the home chord because it's big, it's loud, we spend a lot of time on that, all right? So let's answer one more email question, and then we'll go to Michael Varney's question. The question here is from David Topher. Also, I want to just comment, bow tie. I want to make sure I get to your question, French Fry, because, like I said, it got deleted. And so if you're going to be here to the end, bow tie French Fry, then I'll answer your question at the end. If you're not going to be here till the end, bow tie, please ask it now, and that way I don't forget, because I feel bad that somehow your question just disappeared. So my next question is from David, and David asked a very, very simple question to answer, but it's a very, I'm surprised I haven't heard this question before, and I'm surprised I didn't mention it in my theory course. You said that a note is modified from the designated key with a sharp, flat, natural. If it's modified, it stays that way until undone by another modifier or until the measure ends. Absolutely. If we put a sharp sign in front of a note, then that means that note is going to be sharped forever in that measure until we naturalify it or until the next measure starts. Here's the question. If I modify an F noted on the top line of the staff, are all other F notes, like on the bottom one, are they also modified? So if I place an accidental next to a specific note on the staff, then it's literally only that instance of the note that gets sharped or flat. That's if I put it as an accidental on the staff. If it's in the key signature, it means every instance, no matter where it's at, will have that modification. So the key signature only occurs on 3 lines, but it means that every F is going to be sharp, every G is going to be sharp. If you put it in on one line, in the middle of a measure, so it's not a key signature, if it's literally just an accidental, then that only does apply for that one specific register of F. If you do have a lower octave of an F, that notation does not apply. Great question. And I don't think I go into that nuance on my music theory course. So in the 2.0 version of it, I'll have to include that little fact. Excellent question. Easy one to answer for me personally. Because I've run into it before. So now our next question is from Michael Varney. Michael Varney has been getting into the habit of providing us some of his improvisation abilities. And I have seen a significant improvement in Michael's improv as we continue to do this. I've been offering him little suggestions. He keeps asking me to roast him, and I refuse to do that. Because I think he's playing too well to deserve any roasting. So let's take a listen to what Michael Varney's been going on, and what I'd like to do is give some helpful suggestions to help make your lead sound even better. I'm going to interrupt right away to say, excellent way to start, Michael. The fact that you started off by jamming, the fact that when your jam track, this is what we talked about last time. Don't just come in and be like, hey, I can play lead, man, and just start playing notes. That gets really freaking annoying. And the fact that you warmed us up to your lead, all right? Listen to how Michael starts us off. Rhythm stuff. You almost don't even hear a lead guitar player, right? And then all of a sudden, that is how you make an intro, all right? That's how you bring yourself into a guitar solo. Unless you just want to be ostentatious and brash and come right in there, which there's a time and a place for that. But I think you picked up on my suggestions last time very well. So altogether, I listened through this whole jam. I love the tone. I love the effect. I love how you were in this range for quite a while. And as soon as I started getting bored of you playing up here, listen to what Michael does. Now, we're in a lower range because I was getting sick of all that stuff up there, right? And now the high range comes out even better, right? Yeah, Michael, I have to say, you should not be disappointed in yourself. I know what it's like to be a self-critical musician, but you've made nothing but progress, man. I'll say this, you should be disappointed in yourself if you were not improving, okay? If you were moving backwards or if you were not seeing improvement, then there's a reason to be disappointed. But, you know, there's improvement, and we all make improvement at different paces and at different values, at different, you know, levels. And you're making a lot of improvement with your improv in over a small amount of time. So I'm going to give you another option to help yourself improve your improvisation. And this is for all you guitar players out there, all of you lead players out there, a very, very simple thing, to add speed to our playing. I personally, we talked about patterns last time, like long 3-note patterns. What I tried to encourage Michael to do is more like, you know, stuff like that. And I want to get my stuff mixed a little bit better so I'm not too loud on top of his track. That should work. So I know my guitar's a little quiet. I'll turn it down when we actually do the jam. So this is what I was talking about last time, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. What I want you to do, Michael, is I want you to practice this pattern, all right? And you guys can do this on the piano, you can do this on any instrument, but we're gonna play the top 3 notes, or the top 2 notes of the pentatonic scale. So we're just playing the first string on the 6th fret and the 3rd fret, all right? And I'm gonna do it with a pull-off, all right? It's a pull-off. And then I'm gonna play this note on my 2nd string, all right? So it's a D note on my 2nd string. So this is just a little bit of an arpeggio. That's all I'm thinking. I'm thinking of, like, my tonic chord is G minor. The arpeggio is this. The top 3 notes of my arpeggio are this. And that's all I'm playing. But I'm playing it with a pull-off, and then I play the 2nd string. Those 3 notes, that's all I want you to practice. I want you to do with an upstroke, and then a down. And then again, up, down. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 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 1 and 2. This is one of those things that becomes lightning fast. If you just do it every day, and if you focus on just getting the speed there, because all your pick has to do is this. Da, 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 da. I'm gonna keep my pick at this speed, all right? Listen. That sounds pretty fast, and all my pick is doing is So you don't have to learn a sweep pick to do this. It's a nice fast pattern that doesn't take a lot of practice. What I'm trying to say is I want to hear more fast stuff, and you don't have to be a shredhead to play fast stuff. This specific thing, I got the pleasure of going to see Fish at Alpine Valley on Sunday, and this is one of those things that Trey does all the time in a lot of his songs. He's the main lead guitar player for there. I mean, he'll do this. He'll just play it as a chord progression like that, and he won't even, I mean, a lot of times when I do that progression, I try to make it harder and give it an extra note, like... That's a 4-note pattern, but you can just make it a 3-note pattern. And you could play it like straight triplets, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Or you could think of it as a 16th note, 1 EM, 2 EM, 3 EM, 4 EM, 1 EM, 2 EM, 3 EM, 4 EM, 1 EM, 2 EM, 3 EM, 4 EM, 1 EM, 2 EM, 3 EM, 4 EM. So basically, Yeah, now, Michael Varney's asking, am I harmonizing the pull-offs? So, I'm not sure what you mean by that, if I'm harmonizing them, like letting the notes actually ring out. It doesn't matter right now. Ideally, you want to keep it clean. Listen, you want to keep, like... You don't want the notes to ring out all the time. Like that. But for right now, it's fine because you're new to it. So that's one way to add speed. Find a simple pattern. And I really like these 3-note patterns. But there's another thing, Michael Varney, is just take your pentatonic scale. All guitar players here. This is what I like, the entire pentatonic scale. Easy way to do this. You just take your pentatonic scale and play it with 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and. But as soon as you have a first finger note, you try to turn it into a 16th note. And like 1 E and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So just doing a 16th note right away and then continuing your scale run. All right, so that turned into this. All right, let's do it starting on this string. So I'll go 1 and 2 E and 3 and 4 and... I don't even have to pick that note. It's just a hammer. So let's listen to this again. Michael Varney, I know you can do this. I know you have the skill to do this. It seems that after your hammer-ons, though, you're not accelerating forward. You're doing a hammer-on and staying in that same area. So do a hammer-on and continue the scale. Or... And then start combining them, so... Right? That sounds cool. Now backwards. That lick right there... sounds really fast, and it's not. My pick is just doing downstrokes. All right, so that's what I want you to think about, is adding a little bit more speed in, because it's the one little element that I would like to hear more of. And I know that's scary to think, oh, I got to get faster. You don't have to get faster. You got to find little things that are fast, that are easy to incorporate into your practice. All right? So, excellent question. Shiny Flakes asking why I'm wearing that psychedelic shirt. I've actually had this psychedelic shirt since high school. I am not joking you. I've had this since my junior year in high school. I played the talent show with this this shirt on. It's falling apart. It has holes in it. But yeah, if you go to a Fish concert, you're going to have those psychedelic vibes rolling around in your head for at least a little bit longer. Okay, one more question from email, and I believe this is from Rich Rochelle. Rich Rochelle asked about modes. And here's the question. What do you find the best ways to practice modes to internalize their sound? I found a few instructors, Joe Hubbard Bass, who say that thinking about modes as the C scale starting from X is unhelpful, and I'm inclined to agree. I agree as well. How do you practice modes as chord scales without thinking of them as a C scale starting from X? So, Rich Rochelle, when I want to figure out the notes when I want to figure out the chords of a mode, I'll be honest, that's where it's really helpful. Like if I want to, let's say what are the chords of G Dorian? I don't know. I know the chords of G major. We're always writing in the key of G major, right? Always writing in the key of A major. So when somebody says, what's the key of G Dorian? The first thing I do, honestly, is figure out, well, what is its parent key? G Dorian is actually, do the modal algebra here, right? Dorian is the second mode, correct? So G is the second note of what scale? That's the way I think of that modal algebra. And on my guitar, it's a really thing. Hopefully, every musician can answer that question easily. The second note of any major scale, well, that's just a whole step in front of the tonic. So here's G. That's the second note of whatever's back here, a whole step. Oh, it's F major. So now if I want to write out the chords of G Dorian, I'm just going to think of the chords of F major. It's a lot easier for me to do it that way. Unless you've got your modal Roman numerals completely mastered, which at this point, I'm like 99% mastered with them. I still kind of screw something up. But a lot of times I revert back to the parent key just to figure out what I'm actually dealing with. But the sound and the feel, Rich, I strongly suggest you find reference tracks. I strongly suggest you think of Dorian as Santana. You know what I mean? Santana songs are just Dorian. That's all it is. I just realized the other day. I didn't realize this until I was walking around. It's funny how your mind does that. You guys know the lick, hopefully. That is Santana's Oye Como Va. It's just the rhythm is totally different. I didn't realize the lick is literally note for note. Oye como va. Somebody else must have noticed that before. I just can't believe that nobody brought it out to me, all right? So, yeah, that's the idea. Find a reference track, okay? Find a reference track that makes you think of something. Like the one I remember using, there was a song called Curve by John Petrucci. And I used that for Lydian because it was... Right? It was just that constant... So I knew that when I thought of Curve, I knew that's what Lydian felt like. I think one of the hardest ones for me to get a grasp of was probably Dorian. But once I kind of realized that smoky Santana flavor, becomes pretty easy. Phrygian, the problem with Phrygian is that so many other things become Phrygian dominant that Phrygian just gets, dipped into a little bit. But hopefully, if you have my ultimate modal poster, then it's like, those images that I gave you were to help to describe that. I'm looking at it right now, and when I'm looking at Phrygian, it sounds, here's, E Phrygian. And hopefully, if you're looking at that ultimate poster and you're seeing that brown, dusty, like that to me. So that's why I had all that art on there, is because I wanted you to have an emotional reference, some sort of color, or some sort of sound, some sort of feeling associated with it. So that's how I would recommend you going about it, Rich Rochelle, is find, references for each kind of mode. Dorian, I would go, Santana, Phrygian. I know there's some Pink Floyd. There's a lot of techno and trance. Let's see here. Lydian, I'm going to go lots of progressive rock. Mixolydian, I think somebody said Grateful Dead. Yes, I would go Grateful Dead, or, who said Grateful Dead? Yeah, Michael Varney. Yeah, Grateful Dead is Mixolydian. I would also suggest AC/DC. Minor, well, there's a ton of stuff that's in straight minor. Locrian, well, no comment. Now, back to the Patreon questions. We got a question from Joe Sullivan. Joe Sullivan has a technique question. When you are alternate picking, are you strict about it? 3 notes per string being down, up, down, up, down, up. Or do you tend towards more economy picking? I ask because I feel I can feel lightning fast descending lines, but I struggle with ascending lines. Do you have any tips on picking angle? So, yes, I do have a preference to switch to economy picking whenever convenient. Pretty much all of my licks, I try to organize them so I can do 2 downs in a row, 2 ups in a row when possible. Now, the problem is this: I do believe that economy picking lends itself to being more sloppy. I think it's harder to play things perfectly articulated when you're sweep picking across the strings. I know that jazz players hate that stuff. Jazz players really hate this idea of economy picking. I heard one jazz player tell me, there's no galloping in jazz. And when you end up doing down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, up, down, you kind of get that da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You don't get the ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. So with jazz styles, it's almost very important to keep your strict alternate picking. That way, you can keep that beat metronome going. But me personally, I like to organize all of my licks into a way where I can economy pick them instead. So like before, we were just talking about this 4-note lick. Like, I like to pick this with up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, da 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 da. But I know a lot of people will do down, down, up, down, down, up, down, which I'm so slow. I'm embarrassingly slow. I am like childishly slow with my alternate picking here. And I know this sounds like an excuse, but I have this nasty latency because I've got, because of the way I live stream here, and I've tried to turn it down. I'm going to turn it down a little bit so I can play a little cleaner. But here is a major scale, like as fast as I can play it, with down-up picking. That's, to me, is like really slow. Like, I had students, after a year of practice, they could play faster than that. Now, if you asked me to economy pick that, obviously I have more speed out of that, right? But if you slow that down, with a... You'll notice it's sloppier, right? It's not as articulated, and we lose a little bit of the beat symmetry there. I don't care. I mean, I'm not a jazz player. If I need to play really good jazz, I'll go practice my alternate picking. I don't personally... I mean, we all have technique limitations, and I feel like personally, alternate picking is one of the weakest parts of my game. I know a lot of people are just faster at it and better at it, so it's one of those things that me personally, Joe, I am personally going to arrange it into economy picking. Now, you also asked on pick angle. So me personally, I prefer to keep my pick angled in. So here's my pick like this, all right? It's pointing directly into my guitar right now. And then I like to have it tilted this way, all right? So we're tilting my pick this way, all right, into the strings. So my pick is actually kind of this angle the entire time. That's kind of my natural picking style, all right? Now, I've seen extremely good players do it the exact opposite. I've seen extremely good guitar players have their pick at this angle, all right? So they're literally pinching the pick like this. I don't know if I can get that angle. Like this, they're pinching the pick, whereas I have a tendency to have my thumb bowed, which creates that angle. All right, so with your thumb flexed like that, we get that angle. With your thumb like that, we get that angle. And I've seen people to do this. I mean, I can tremolo pick like that. If I put my pick at this angle, I can do that. But I have no control over... I can't play like that. I haven't practiced like that. So I personally like that angle, but there's a lot of controversy over this. If you get into Troy Grady, I think, did the pick slanting. The real secret to this is on pick slanting, breaking the code. That was the real thing on that. I tried to practice it. It was too hard. I didn't have the motivation to practice it because it's like, you know, I could spend literally an entire life practicing this stuff, or I could just get better at making music, you know? So... Hunter's asking about my pick preference. Personally, I really like thick, huge, massive picks. And I have none of them. I've literally tapped myself out of all of them. So I need to go and custom order another dozen, a gross of them, so they can last me another 6 months before I lose them all. But I like about 1.12 millimeters, and I like the rounded triangle Clayton picks. Those give me a ton of surface area to grip onto. They don't flex at all, so if I'm trying to do something fast that it holds in there, I can chug on the low strings, I can shred on the high strings. The only time I don't use those picks is if I'm doing something on the acoustic guitar, because it's just going to sound like absolute garbage. So, let's continue. We have some questions from deleted. I don't know how, but yeah, Bowtie's thing got deleted. And like I said, Bowtie, you said you sent me an email, but I don't see an email. So Bowtie, did you ask your question? Let's go back. You're still free to ask it, Bowtie. But now we've got a question from Wybrit. Knowing the fretboard is key in order to becoming a good guitarist. Is there a way I can gauge my current knowledge of the fretboard in order to understand what degree I know the fretboard? Well, right, but I mean, the obvious answer is just, you know, pick a note and ask yourself if you can know that fretboard, you know, the name of that note. You know, you should be able to at least within a few seconds, you know, figure out that note. And so that's one of those things I think about. You don't have to have the whole thing memorized, but you should be able to figure it out really quick. So like this area right here, like I have no idea what's going on here tonally. Like what note is this? I have no idea. All right, now I'm going to look at it. And the way I'm going to figure it out is I'm just going to imagine I'm an octave lower, right? I know that, by the way, in my course, this is how I talk about figuring out your notes. I know that this note is an octave of this note. And I have that note memorized. I absolutely have that note memorized. So I know that this note here is a B, right? So I use those tricks, those octave tricks, quite a bit to tell me the actual name of the note that I'm in. What I think is more important than knowing the name of the note, though, is the context of the note. I think it's far more important to be able to start on a note like this and say, where are the major thirds? Well, I could get one here, and I could get one here. All right? There's also other, but they're not convenient to get to. Ask yourself, okay, where are my, and even in a next octave, where's my next major third? All right, here's another one. I think that's far, a billion times more important than knowing the name of the note. Just saying, okay, where are my fourths? Oh, well, here's one, here's one, here's one. Where's my tritones? Well, they're here, they're here. Okay, where are the major sixths? All right, there's the major sixth. Here's the major sixth. Knowing that is like so crucial, because then if you know those things, you can find the flatted twos and the sharp fours and stuff like that. But I really think that's more important, because when I'm thinking solo, I'm not thinking note, I'm thinking interval, I'm thinking context, I'm thinking I'm playing the root, I'm playing the seventh. Oh, where's the fifth? Oh, I know it would sound really cool here is the tritone. You know, B, I don't give a crap about B. B sounds different every time. B might sound good or bad, but the tritone is always going to sound like the tritone. So I'm always thinking about stuff like that as opposed to just thinking of the names of the notes. I hope that gives you something to consider, Wybrit. Now, Lozenge. Lozenge has changed the song that we had talked about. I had given Lozenge some criticism on their chord progression before, and they have made some changes, and then also figured out, you know what, hey, this A major chord is not diatonic, but it sounds good. Yes, it does, Lozenge, and this is the great thing about music. You know, the rules are just not rules. They are just, you know, hey, look what happened before, look what happens a lot. And when you break rules, a lot of times things sound interesting. So basically, what Lozenge, it doesn't really have too much of a question here, but I do want to say I think it's an improvement, and I also want to take a listen of like how much I like this chord progression because of the fact that it doesn't have a stable tonal center. It's shifting between tonal centers. Now, I could spend all day analyzing this to figure out why and what tonalities is it shifting in between, but just take a listen to this. This is like a confusing chord progression that doesn't sound bad. I don't think any of this sounds bad. Of course, the production's pretty minimal. I mean, we're talking MIDI and like a same simple loop. But if you think about the harmony is really interesting to me. And it would be really a great challenge to write a melody over the top of this because you're in between worlds and you don't even know how you get there, which I think is pretty cool. We don't have anything that sounds bad. We don't have anything that sounds confusing. We just have some mystery. So let's listen to Lozenge's new chord progression. So, I mean, there's nothing predictable about it, right? Which could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing, depending on what you're trying to do. And I find that pretty interesting. If you're trying to make music that keeps the listener on their feet, then being unpredictable is an important thing. Now, the challenge here is making it listenable to the lay public. Most of the general public is going to want to hear something consistent. So to turn that into something that's going to consistent is going to be pretty hard, Lozenge, but I do like the improvements that you've made to it. Now, the other part of the question is, can you give me advice on tremolo strumming? So I don't know exactly what you mean by tremolo strumming. If you're talking about like rasgueado, I don't know how to do rasgueado. I tried to learn rasgueado. I gave up pretty quick. If you're talking about like just strumming really fast, like Kyle Gass from Tenacious D, you know? I mean, I don't have much advice on that before. One, I don't do it much. And two, yeah, I just couldn't. I don't even know if that's what you're talking about. If that is what you're talking about, Lozenge, I'm happy to give you some advice on it, but I would say my initial thing is like probably a flappy pick. I'm assuming that a floppy pick is the most important thing about tremolo strumming. That's what I would assume. All right. So just a few more questions left here. We've got one from Sean Murphy. And Sean Murphy, I love this question. On arpeggios, how to construct them in the context of moving box to box. I watched your video, but I understand you're playing all the component notes of a chord. I am unsure of what parameters one would use to decide, okay, from this note to the next, I'm going to slide up into the next box. So Sean Murphy, I love this. I'll try to answer your question about arpeggios here a little bit. So an arpeggio, remember, is just the notes of a chord, but on the guitar, geometry comes into place, you know, because of the shape of our instrument, we have these weird little things. So here is like an A minor arpeggio, right? But I could have played that a lot of ways. I mean, just remember every one of these things I could play many ways. I'm choosing to play it right now. And I'm choosing to stop it right here. I could play way lower, but let's just say, let's limit ourselves. I'm only gonna play the arpeggio on these 3 strings. So what I want to ask myself is, where is the next convenient set of those 3 notes? Where is A, C, E later on in my fretboard? How can I play A, C, E at a different spot? Well, there's this shape. How do I connect them? Well, there's a million ways I could connect them. I could go like up this arpeggio and then down that shape. right? So I'm just trying to find a way that these little two shapes connect between these three strings. All right, let's do it totally different. Let's go down this arpeggio shape, and then we'll have to move up to this arpeggio shape. All right, so you see it was... That's a cool lick now. You know, that's a nice arpeggio-based lick. Because you're just thinking about, well, you know, I don't have to play the whole freaking arpeggio. I don't have to... And then go up to this one. No, you can just use little bits of it. All right, or a 4-string arpeggio. So let's add in another string. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4th string. The next mode of this arpeggio is up here. And then from there, where do we want to go? Well, the next shape, I know that these sets of notes, basically there's only, you know, 3 or 4 practical ways to do it, and those are the shapes that we're going to see. And this shape, hopefully you've seen it, it looks like this. So that shape right there could connect. There's no right or wrong way to do it, is what I'm saying. And depending on what string you're on is going to kind of determine how you get there, depending on the shapes that you've learned. Because like I said, there are a lot of ways to play just the same arpeggio. Let's look at this one, for example. Some people might play it like this. Some people might play it like this. Oh. Right? They might, at the end, put their first finger here instead of using their pinky here. So doing that changes the way you might think, because it's like, well, now I have my index finger on the string. What can I do from here? Well, I can bring it up here. So now I could do... Right? Now, this stuff looks so simple on the piano. If you do this on the piano, you're gonna be like, oh, it's just the same freaking 3 notes over and over and over and over again. It just seems complicated on our guitars because of the way our shapes look. So that's the important thing I want you to keep in mind, is that it's just 3 notes over and over and over again. How you choose to play those notes, the way you're going to get to those 3 notes is completely determined by the shapes that you're practicing. And so that's why I recommend you learn lots of shapes. There's tapped arpeggio shapes. That's awesome when you start tapping through it. There's swept shapes. There's alternate pick shapes where you got to, you know, go way high up the fretboard and nothing is actually like, you know, just big stretches. So depending on the arpeggio shapes you're practicing, that's kind of going to determine how you're going to use them. All right. Now, we have a question from Nicholas Peshman. And Nicholas Peshman's question is, I've been struggling with developing rhythm. I've been practicing with a metronome, and when I'm playing, I think and hear that I am in time. But when I replay the video or use the DAW to verify I am well outside, for instance, playing the beat at a beat of 80 beats per minute, I can be a 16th note off. But when I was playing, I can distinctively remember thinking I played it perfectly on time. And the reverse seems to be true. You know, when the DAW and video shows I am on time, I remember thinking I didn't even hear the metronome or feeling lost. So it's all very disorienting. Well, let's talk about this first. If you are playing perfectly on time to a metronome, the metronome will disappear. Okay, and especially if you're doing something like drum practice. This is one of my favorite things to do. When I did have a drum set in my studio, is I would turn on my metronome and I would just do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, and like literally the simplest just dot, 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 until I could get that metronome to vanish. And it will vanish because your transient is happening at the exact same moment that the metronome's happening, and it's happening louder, and you can't hear the metronome anymore. That's cool. I recommend you practice it. It sounds, Nicholas, like you are on the right path, because I remember being in this same struggle. But here would be my advice, because this is where it gets really difficult. If you're playing your instrument, it's very hard to listen at the same time, because your brain is very active. You're thinking about chords, you're thinking about notes. So the goal here is to be able to be mindful while you're playing. And the best way to do this is do something easy. Make it as easy as possible. Let's say your chord progression is really hard. Well, just pick one chord and just work on the rhythm on that. Let's say the riff is really hard. Well, don't worry about that. Simplify the riff just so you're only able to listen and you're able to say, okay, I'm not thinking about this. I'm thinking about dot, 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 dot. Your attention needs to be on that sometimes. And then once it's there, sometimes you can take your attention away and you stay in that beat. But really, it must consume you. That, It's like your heartbeat. You need to meditate on the tick, 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 tick. It needs to be at the forefront of your mind. And if you're worried about the next note that's going to come, if you're worried about switching chords fast enough, if you're worried about anything other than this, you're probably going to have issues until you've practiced for 100 hours to a click. And then it does become an internal thing. Here's the good news. I want to just remind you that I was rhythmically completely lost. Rhythm was absolutely the poorest part of my game as a musician. It's still funny for me to think about that because of how far I've come as a rhythmatician. To think back at how bad I was. I remember turning off my guitar at a live show because I couldn't play on time, and I wanted to play the solo. I was with a friend's band, and I wrote the solo for them. So I shredded the solo because it was just shredding. You know, it doesn't have to be on time. And then the rest of the song, I just turned off my guitar because I couldn't stay on time with the drummer. Like, that's how bad I was with this stuff. So, you know, the process does work. In spending time with that metronome, meditating on that metronome, doing simple stuff. Think about just like going really, really simple. Back to the basics, you know, just this kind of crap, which I freaking love doing stuff like this, you know. Just this. Are you bored yet? Because I'm not. I could do this all day, everybody. You know what I couldn't do all day is this. That was a little sloppy, right? I am going to use my latency as an excuse. I can do this stuff pretty well if there's no latency, but I am getting a little bit of feedback on that. So that's what I would recommend you do. Okay, that's definitely my advice is continue with it. And I would say that, Nicholas, I'm going to say that this is part of the process. I think this is actually good news that you're experiencing this and that you're hearing this and that you're understanding it. The scary thing, and I've seen it too many times, is the people that don't realize it. They never realize they're going off time. So, you know, it's like recognizing it as, admitting it is the first step, right? Isn't that what they say? Understanding that you are lacking a little bit of your, I mean, that tells me like, I'm very happy with this question. I'm very happy with what you're doing. It makes me think that you're going to solve this all on your own. So maybe all I need to tell you is just keep practicing because it sounds like you're on the right path. Okay. But I love the question and it's a great problem to have. It means you're practicing the right things. The musicians that practice this and fix this can become studio musicians. They can become gigging professionals that just pick up but the musicians that don't get that, it's hard to sound good when you can't be on time. I'll tell you that, right? So, okay, just a few more questions here, and then we'll get to all the live chat questions. Lusk Luther, why do composers change key? We can express the same emotions staying in the same key. I get the answer is interest, but I don't think it's convincing enough. Can you give me a few more reasons? So, Lusk, I'd say there's a few different reasons I would change key, personally, but I think that the main reason is because your brain, whether you like it or not, or whether you're aware of it or not, there's a Mr. Plinkett quote, you know, you might not have noticed it, but your brain did. When you listen to a song that only uses 7 chords or 7 notes, your brain notices it, whether you're aware of it or not. And when all of a sudden you change key, your brain will notice that. Your brain will be like, what? Whether you're conscious of that or not, your brain will detect there are new frequencies. Something new has happened. So subconsciously, it does create interest. Also, I think of key as being somewhat subjective to your instrument. Let's say you're no longer comfortable being in that key and you want to do something lower, but you're in the key of E flat. Well, the lowest chord that I can play is an E, So like there's the geometrical reason you might change a key. I do think that most composers change key though because it creates some sort of interest that you cannot find in the diatonic chords, Lusk. So, when you're using the 7 diatonic chords, how much interest can you get? Well, there's only 7 chords. What surprises are you going to bring on them? Oh, you're going to bring in a secondary dominant? Okay, but you're still bringing them back to one of the 7 chords. Oh, you're going to bring in a borrowed chord? Okay, but you're still going to bring them back to one of the 7 chords. When all of a sudden you change keys, it's like we move to a whole different state, a whole different province, a whole different country. And like the music is different. It's a complete change of scenery for me. So I think it's a more pronounced shift depending on when you do it. And it can be really surprising. There's nothing more surprising than a big, unexpected key change. It's hard to surprise people that much when you're staying within a key. Lusk's other question. assuming that the 5 chord resolves to the 6 chord. I see this in some music, but I also see the dominant 3 chord resolving to the 6. How does one make this decision? So I don't think there's any decision to be made here, but let's just talk about this here really quick. If we are in the key of, we'll go simple, C major, all right. C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, all right? So here are our 7 chords. And what Lusk is talking about is the fact that G resolves to the 6 chord. And well, normally when we think of the 5 chord G, right? When we're in the key of C major, we normally think of the G chord as being the one that takes us back to C. So here's C major, D minor, E minor, F, G. G comes back to C quite a bit, right? That's the dominant chord. The dominant chord takes us back to 1. But you know what happens a lot of times is we'll do something like 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 5, 6, right? That is the deceptive cadence. The deceptive cadence is when you go from the 5 chord to something other than the 1 chord. And the most popular way to move, the most popular type of deceptive cadence is from the 5 to 6. So just the movement of 5 to 6 is known as a deceptive cadence. It just works well, right? My 5 chord leaves very, very well to my 6 chord. But there's another thing here, all right? And if we want to get to A minor, so that's G to A minor. If we want to get to A minor, what is the dominant chord of A minor? What is the chord that pulls us to A minor more than any other chord in the world? If we just look at A minor in isolation, the answer is go up a 5th and build a 7th chord, all right? So if I go up a 5th from A, I get the note E, and then that gives me an E major or an E7 chord. So E7 will take me to A minor more than anything else. So Lusk's question is, when should I resolve to A minor through the use of a E7, which, by the way, Lusk, here's the other part of your question. E7 is this chord, right? You're thinking of it as, oh, hey, I've taken my 3 chord and I've made it a 7th chord. I'm not really thinking of it that way. You can, but then that's another way to think of it. But I'm thinking of it as E7 as being the dominant chord of my 6. All right, that's how I would label this chord. So this E7 you're talking about here, when you said the dominant 3, I'm not going to call it that. I'm going to call it the dominant of my 6 chord. That's what it is. It's the dominant of A minor. And yes, it happens to be E7. So you could call it this. You could call it the 3 chord. And sometimes I will call it the 3 chord. Sometimes I won't. But now the question is, when do you choose? Well, let's listen. You know, what does F, G, and A minor sound like? Now let's listen to like F, E7 to A minor. How do you feel the difference between those, Luther? How does this feel? F, G, A minor. Now let's listen to F, E7, A minor. Do they feel different to you? I know they feel different to me. I know that the E7 has like, I get a little bit of evil wizard, all right? I always get the evil wizard flair. Like just casting spells. A little bit of harmonic minor always helps out there, right? So we're not getting that when we just go, you know, there's nothing non-diatonic about this. This chord all of a sudden introduces my leading tone. By bringing in this E7, I have a leading tone to A minor. So, you know, things to think about. But that's the way I would think about it. There's no, the melody might dictate it, you know, if there's a G sharp in your melody, yeah, of course, then we want to kind of include that in there. But I think about what is the emotion of the chord, and do I want that emotion in there? If you listen to Eric Johnson's playing, how do you define his music and playing? Example, David Gilmour, mostly pentatonic and blues lick bending, chord tone targeting. I say Eric Johnson is mostly pentatonic major, mostly major and mixolydian. He seems to, I'm going to say mostly pentatonic major and mixolydian. He seems to walk that line between mostly major stuff with a lot of flat 7s. And what's really important about Eric Johnson is the groupings of 5. He is always experimenting with those really... How do you... Yeah, Tadek even in front of me. I used to know a little bit of Cliffs of Dover. Oh yeah, I'm not going to embarrass myself here. I learned like 90% of it, and there was 10% that I just couldn't learn. But when I tried to learn Cliffs of Dover, I realized immediately The amount of fives, the amount of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is extremely rare. Very, very, very few guitar players do that kind of thing. And I think it's what helps give him such a unique sound, is that that grouping of 5. It's really hard to do. You know, try practicing any grouping of 5, just going up 5 notes and repeating it, going up 5 notes and repeating it over and over. Last question from Luther. Is guitar playing losing its importance in this time of age of electronic music? No, I think it's actually getting very, very trendy. Because what I see in a lot of pop music, a lot of EDM, is guitar, and specifically tenths. So you take any chord progression. We were just talking about the 1 and the 7. So here's E minor, D major, C major, right? If you play it like this on your guitar, the kids might be like, "You're a boomer." And that's fine. But you know what? The kids will say you're trendy if you play it in tenths. So take every single chord, and it's nice on the guitar, and the guitar usually works out to just being like, you skip a few strings, and in this case I'm going to play the 5th string and the 2nd string, but play the note and play the 10th, and play it at the same time. I mean, this kind of stuff is happening all the time in EDM pop. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna bring like some sort of dubstep loop or something like that, some sort of hip hop loop, and let's see if we can kind of hear what I'm talking about. Drums, electronic drums. What is our dubstep loop gonna sound like? So, same chords. And especially if we get some better effects on here, let's do, let's change my Plini guitar plugin to some of the nice, classier. We've got some beautiful presets on here, like the Crystal Clean. This should do it. I mean, listen to like Zed songs. I mean, if you listen to pop radio, you're going to hear a lot of that stuff. I can give, there's another song here. The one I'm thinking off the top of my head is Bieber, Love Yourself. That one is all tenths. I think we talked about this. So Lusk is asking a 10th, we'll just count your scale. Any of your chord, it's going to basically be your 3rd, just an octave higher. That's all a 10th is. So if here's my E major chord, 1, and here's the 3rd, now let's just play that an octave higher. Or you can just think of it as the 10th note of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But you're going to hear this stuff all over the place. So I think that, you know, electric guitar is back in, at least for now. And I love, as somebody who produces a lot of music, and sometimes it's electronic, I'm telling you, I get a lot of use out of my electric guitar. A lot of it, so. All right, so that does it for all the questions here on Patreon. So now, if you have any questions here in the live chat, I am more than happy to try to answer them. And in the meantime, what I'm going to do is try to look up a bit to see if I've missed anything like that. So ask away right now, and I will scroll up and drink some tea in the meantime. Jared is asking, do you recommend doing that to a metronome and changing between divisions as you go? So Jared, I think one of the best exercises you can possibly engage in is to take a metronome and go through all of the cycles. You know, really like all, let's get like a slow metronome, and you're doing like per beat. So 1 per beat. 1, 1, 1, 1. 2 per beat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 per beat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tadegina doom, tadegina doom, tadegina doom, tadegina doom, takadina, 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 takadina. This is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 7. is takadimi, takata, takadimi, takata. Oh, too fast. And it doesn't help that I've got a ton of delay on here, huh? Let me turn off my delay. Yeah. So just going through those different cycles, I find extremely helpful. At different tempos, extremely helpful. Turn that off. 7. Takadimi, takata, 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 and then 8th should be a little bit easier, believe it or not, even though it's faster, because it's takadimi, 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 takadimi. So, 9s, 10s, 11s as fast as you can go and trying at different tempos. That, I think, is excellent metronome practice. Doing it with your hands as well. You can obviously see that I use my voice to help me out. Okay, I don't see any questions from earlier, so I'm going to scroll back to the bottom and see what we've got. Jay Gomer. Hi, Jay. Good to see you. Are those 10th chords the one that were on Songland with Ryan Tedder of One Republic? I don't know, but if you're saying One Republic, I'm going to say yeah. That sounds like the kind of, music where you're going to hear that exact same kind of thing. There's another one. I'm trying to... it's a stupidly popular song. It was... I can't even... it's like some... I don't know. I'll remember it someday. But it's just popular stuff. Keep it in mind. Listen for it. That's what I want you to think about. Jason, am I right in thinking a tritone substitution is essentially the flat 2 of the tonic chord? That is absolutely my favorite shortcut way of thinking about it. So if I'm in the key of A major, right? And here's my tonic chord of A major 7. And if I want to play the 4 chord, right? And let's see here. Yeah, A major 7, D major 7. Normally, we would play E7 to get back to A major 7. But instead of E7, what's a tritone away from E7? Well, it's going to be this note, B flat, or A sharp, which happens to be a half step next door to my tonic. Right? So that is the easiest way to think of it as a flat 2 chord. But there are other flat 2 chords out there, right? The Neapolitan chord is a flat 2 chord, though it's usually in inversion, and it's usually not a 7th chord. So yeah, it's a very, very quick little shortcut to find it. So let's listen to what it would sound like. A major 7, D major, or A major 7, D major 7, and then let's do the 6th chord, and then we'll just go straight to our weird... Now, what kind of chord should it be? When you play the flat 2, what kind of chord is it supposed to be? Some people say it should be a 7th chord. I don't. I personally think it should be some sort of altered 7th chord. So if you can do a 7th with a flat 5, that's going to sound really, really, really nice. So, right? Or like, let's see here. There's major, so we'll do dominant 7. Yeah, with a... an altered, right? That sounds pretty nice as well. Or maybe a 7. Can we do a 7 with a sharp 5? Yeah, that works well too. So any sort of altered 7th chord. A 7th chord where you've taken the 5th and you flattered it or sharped it. Or you've taken a 7th chord and you've added something like a sharp 9 or a flat 9. I think those are the best candidates for tritone substitutions. They seem to work really, really well. You just move over a half step next door and you do it. Now, the most common way to hear them is for a 2-5-1 to progression, because check it out. 2-5-1 would be B, and then E, and then A major 7. But since we have B, what's underneath B? B flat. And then we could do our... So B minor 7, B flat 7, with any of the alterations, to A major 7. And you get that bum, bum, bum. And let's do a different one. We'll do... Yeah, and in that case, we get the melody note staying the same. So 2, tritone substitution, and then to A major 7. Cool. Hunter. Jake, how do you normally practice your modes? Do you treat them as their own keys? So I don't really practice my modes anymore. When I did, I'll tell you how I started practicing my modes. I just practiced them and memorized the shapes on my guitar. So if you're a guitar player, a lot of guitar players, they get confused at the difference between shape and scale. So I would just practice the shapes, and I learned them all in 1 week. Yeah, that's how good of a musician I am. Are you all jealous? I learned all my modes in 1 week. I memorized them all, and I went back to guitar lessons. I'm like, hey, I memorized all my modes. I still didn't know what my modes were, okay? It took me about 2.5 years after that lesson to actually understand, I don't know my modes. I just learned a bunch of ways to play the major scale in different positions, you know what I mean? So, and Lusk, well, I'll answer your question in a little bit. But yeah, I don't really practice them anymore. I do treat them as their own keys. I think that's the right way to think about a mode. Otherwise, you're just going to revert back to major. Think about this for a second, Hunter. Think about the fact that, you know, imagine this. Imagine the very first scale someone ever teaches you. Your first music lesson, and they say, okay, here's how music gets made in the world. You start with a root, and you play a second, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth, and a flat seven, and a root. And what you get is these cool chords. What you're not allowed to do is you're not allowed to play a natural seven because it's too happy. Like, this could totally be a thing. There might be a planet out there or a underground cult of people where the major scale is not the dominant scale. The Mixolydian scale is actually the scale, right? Like, there's no reason why major is, I mean, there might be a scientific, like, physical reason or something, but, like, really, I mean, the Greek modes were all kind of the same, you know, and they weren't, it's like some point in time, major became default. So if major is the default, well, let's just pretend that Phrygian's the default. Let's just build all of our music theory from Phrygian. We can do that. That's totally fine. But I really think it's important. Let's learn major like its own scale. Now let's learn minor like its own scale. Let's learn Dorian like its own key. And when you're doing that, forget how they're related. Completely forget how they're related. Treat them like their own thing. Then when you've learned all 7, you can understand, oh, they're all the same thing. I can rotate around this wheel and I can get whatever mode I want depending on where I shift my gaze. Where do I put my tonal center on? That'll create these rearrangements of notes. So that's how I would recommend you at least write with them. Jared, what music are you currently working on? If not, what are you currently listening to but collaborating or composing? So right now I'm working on 2 different songs. Well, I just finished a song. This would be a fun one for you all to check out. I am engaged in a very deep songwriting activity. Let's see if I can find this. I hope I can actually find it, because we just finished this and it's really, really good. Yeah, here we go. So one of my Patreon students and I have been working for a long time on some EDM. EDM is not the thing I work on the most often, but this EDM is very specific, extremely specific. It's about cybersecurity, because this Patreon student is actually a cybersecurity engineer. So what we have been doing is collaborating on working some EDM music, and I've taken on it as a passion project for myself. And here is our most recent track. So you can actually check this one out on YouTube. This is called Patch Your Network by Activate. All right, and so yeah, that's ACTIV8TE. And here's the song that we did together. Sorry. Try that again. So, you know, it's pretty fun stuff. I definitely take a listen to the whole thing. I think it's a really fun track. It's very niche, you know what I mean? Because it's about cybersecurity. But there's some really cool sections in here. So that's one fun thing I'm working on. And then way more important, I don't know if I should spill the beans on this one because it's not done. And I really hate, giving you something that's not done. I'll give you a little sneak peek, all right? But I'm working with my good friend Beard Stank on what might be the greatest song I've ever had a chance to produce. I mean that honestly. I'm actually kind of jealous because he wrote a better song than I've ever written. He's written a very, very, very fantastic 80s song, and I am producing it for him, and I just can't get enough of it. So here is the current version of it. Here's a chorus. So I can't spoil the rest of it, all right? But I'm going to tell you right now, it's the greatest and the dumbest song I have ever made. And you won't know why it's dumb yet until you actually hear it. I don't know when it's going to be done. We've got a few more vocals to do, and then we want to make a music video. But come on, the first lyric in that song is, I can see the ocean burning, the Mona Lisa smiles. I cannot think of a better opening lyric for a song ever. Listen one more time. Like, come on, I could never write a lyric like that if you gave me a million years. That is the greatest song lyric I've ever heard. I just love it, okay? So, all right. Thanks for asking, Jared. It's always fun to share your stuff. I'm going to keep going down here. Is Yoko the Egg and I a chip music type song? I don't know, Michael Varney. I don't know the Egg and I don't want to play it on stream because I don't want to get banned. Yoko Kano's. I thought you were talking about Yoko Ono. Chiptunes usually just means it's like for a video game. It's made with like 8-bit synthesizers. And I think that John is actually using some specific software that has limitations, hardware limitations. So I think it's real chiptunes, like the chiptunes I make, which I was going to try to pull up and I couldn't find because it was a looping song and I wanted to include that with part of our discussion today with loops. And it was also a chiptune, but I just can't find it. So I couldn't answer that, Michael. Luther's asking about tritone subs. Luther, just rewind a little bit. Rewind a little bit. The tritone substitution is a tritone away from your dominant chord. So when you're trying to resolve with a dominant chord, you could just substitute that for the chord that's a tritone away. All right. And it'll still resolve to the tonic. It'll still resolve to the minor or major tonic. And when you do that, it ends up being a half step away. So it ends up feeling like a flat 2 to a 1 resolution. All right. I will do a big lesson on tritone substitutions one day to go through all those different things. Hunter saying things just clicked. Good. Love to hear it. Michael Varney mentions the cult of the deadhead. Yes, it's only Mixolydia. That's where they live. Yeah. It would be a fun planet to visit. Yeah, where everything's just naturally in Dorian or Locrian or something like that. And Jared saying EDM is a lot of fun to create in a DAW. Yeah, it's pretty much like what the DAW is meant for, and it's funny because I don't do a lot of EDM, and it's been a really, really interesting process to do this, and I'm learning a lot from it. So, hopefully it can help me level up my EDM skills. It's always something I've wanted to do is write dance music and then have somebody else DJ it, and that way I can make $1 billion by writing music. That would be fun. Who doesn't want to make $1 billion writing music? I just don't want to have to DJ at a club. I don't want to have to put a mouse hat on my head and, sweat inside that for 4 hours and pretend like I really enjoy being in a dark room with a bunch of fog and, sweaty people and stuff like that. Somebody else can go do that, and I'll just be in the background counting my money. All right, that's what I'll do. Hunter associates EDM with my synthy nonsense Doge dance. Oh no, you don't want to think about that. That's a terrible exploration of EDM. That was a fun little moment though. Jared saying, I got to post what I'm working on so my fans can get their fix. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way, Jared. When I do something that's substantial, like once me and my friend Niels get this EDM project off the ground, we will do a little bit more promotion with it. And once I do something that's more substantial, I'll start doing more promoting of that kind of thing. But right now, I'm just more in teaching mode. I'm more in product mode. I don't have much to share. I probably won't be doing a lot of big music creation until, my book is done and my business is completely off the ground. Hopefully, I have a long life to live and I have plenty of time to keep making music. In the meantime, I just try to write what I can, what motivates me the most. What motivates me right now is writing this awesome 80s song with my friend Jeff and just spending our best at it, helping my friend out with his EDM tracks and anything else that comes along the way. Hunter, what can we expect for the rest of the year with the Signals Music Studio page? Not sure. I mean, I definitely know that, I'm going to upload videos again one day. I just don't know when, and it's obviously going to depend on when my book is done, which is just taking forever. When it is done, though, I want to keep the Signals Music page pristine. I want that to stay as like the Library of Alexandria. I want for the next 10 years, people can go to that channel and click on any video, and they get a high-quality lesson. And doing that means I need to spend, 100 hours plus on each lesson. That's how, it's a minimum of 100 hours to make one of those Signals videos. So I don't want to do, check out this cool chord. I don't want to do that video. I don't want to do update videos. I've done those and I don't want to do any more of those. If that's going to be a library for people. I don't want to do a bunch of collabs that don't teach you anything. I want it to make absolutely pristine information. Now, I will make I will upload more to the Jake Lizio YouTube channel and do stuff like check out this cool chord or more stuff. That'll happen one day. So I definitely have a plan for the future. But that plan all depends on making the greatest chord book that has ever existed. And making the greatest chord book that has ever existed is going to take me some time. It's going to take me longer than I'm comfortable taking. So I know that it's taking longer than you are all comfortable for. So for those of you who are being patient, thank you. For those of you who are not being patient, I get it, okay? But I have nothing else to say other than that. I'm not going to rush it because I believe that I had this luxury to make a great product that everybody's going to love, and I just, rushing it is not the way to do that. And that doesn't motivate me. I want to do things that I care about, and I care about doing this right, so. All right, anything else? Oh, Jared, Jeff ghosted you? Okay, yeah, well, I wouldn't take it personally. He did that to the other person I told him to get. It's less of him ghosting and him just having no ability to organize his schedule or his mind or anything. He has executive dysfunction, I swear. He needs somebody to tell him at all times what he's doing, so. That's why I'm his producer. I mean, he writes ideas better than I could ever write. And this is where musical collaborations come in really helpful. Somebody like Jeff comes into the studio, they're going to have ideas that you cannot. They're $1 billion ideas. I mean, and he's just filled with them. It's like a geyser of amazing artistic creativity. But then when it comes down to time to do it or to harness that creativity or to turn it into a product, that's where it takes somebody more boring like me. I'm far more boring than Jeff. And I can take that idea and okay, let's distill it, let's chop it up, let's dissect it, let's turn it into something we can actually do. And yes, it dilutes a little bit of that gold along the process, but hey, by the end of the day, we have a song that's done. So that's where I think collaborations really, really help out. Luther, the book is a course. I mean, the book is a book, but it's going to be an entire course on chord theory. You read this book, you learn everything you could possibly want to know about every chord that exists and how to use them. So that includes modal mixture, that includes tritone substitutions, that includes basically everything, chromatic mediants, all that kind of stuff. But when the book is done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload an entire video course on a separate YouTube channel. There will be a YouTube channel called, Learn All the Chords or something like that. And what I'll do is it'll be okay, let's go through the first chapter, because it's important to see that stuff and hear that stuff. And then if it'll teach people for free. So whoever wants to watch these videos on chords, they can watch this free course on chords. But two, everything will be a commercial for my book. Let's face it, I'm going to be teaching out of the book. A lot of people that watch those videos are going to say, hey, that looks like a really cool book. I want to buy it. So to me, it kills two birds with one stone. I can teach for free. I'm not locking anybody out of learning. And I'm also doing something for my, well-being and I have to pay bills and I have to do things that'll help pay the bills. And you can't just give everything out for free and do that. But you can if it's a commercial that helps people. And that's my way of trying to kind of do it both ways, where I'm not being ultra greedy, but I'm also not, damaging my own possibilities. So it's a book, but it's also going to be a course. You know what I mean? So yeah, Hunter, I am going to be putting out a book. That's why I haven't been on the Signals Music YouTube channel for so long. A lot of my newer Patreon supporters don't realize that. I had posted some updates on YouTube and let people know. But yeah, until that book is done, that's why I'm not going back to Signals immediately. I'll have to post something. If it takes too long, I'll have to post like an intermediary thing. But I think it's just going to be something fun. However, I mean, I'll be back. Hopefully, the people that really need something from me can get a hold of me here on Patreon. You all know how to get a hold of me here, signalsmusicjake@gmail.com. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And I'll still be doing like little lessons. Like this Thursday, we're going to be talking about writing with Hemiola. I think next week what I'd like to do is do a thing on modes. I know I get a lot of modal questions. So I want to maybe do a little modal demonstration, a live thing like that. I think that would be kind of helpful for people. So I plan on staying here active, to answer specific questions in the interim while I am not on YouTube. John saying, I happened to stumble across your channel not too long ago, and there's so much good information I've been digging into. Good. Yeah, and that's what I want it to be, John. I want that channel to be something where you can watch every video, especially if you're a guitar player, and that's why I kind of started going away from guitars, because I realized so many drummers and so many piano players, like, I don't want to just do guitar lessons, but I want to do composing lessons. So I really want it so every one of those videos is something you can learn from and start applying all the way, like immediately. Michael Varney saying, stuck on the song, 90% there, but not the lyrics and the production. I am frozen, mostly in fear. How do you break out of that, Jake? Well, Michael, I'm happy to help you out. If you want to do a consultation or something like that, if you want to do a one-on-one, let me know. We'll meet up a Zoom meeting. We'll take a listen to your song. I'll give you some suggestions on that kind of thing, okay? What about using chords to build... What about something like using chords to build chord melody? I find it as an interesting concept, but I don't know the best to approach it. Well, if you already have a chord progression, Luther, then you can find a melody within that, right? But that's not the way I'm always thinking about melody, So, writing melody, you can have many strategies to do it. And one of those strategies is find the note that's already in the chord and make that a focal point of your melody. And then just find a way to bridge the gap in between that. That's absolutely one way to do it. The other way is find a melody first and then find chords that can be tangentially related to that. Or, you write melodies that intentionally don't use the chord tone, so you get some really weird, abstract, ambiguous things. So, a lot of ways to do it, and I don't want to pigeonhole the whole way in there, If that's the stuff you're really into, I would think about learning to do, like, professional, classical voice leading, 18th century voice leading, but that's not really my domain. I can't teach that kind of thing, so. All right, folks, I think that's going to do it for tonight. I actually think that's going to be everything for this evening. So thank you so much for joining. Unless I see any last minute questions, I really appreciate your patience through tonight's rough start, right? We did not have the closest start, but it looks like some people made it here anyways. So let's close out with more of my African safari puzzle game music. Oh, that's not right. And that'll be our goodbye music, right? No, that's not going to be our goodbye. We're going to go back to this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, thank you again for joining us for another episode of Signals Music Live. We hope today's episode was educational, inspirational, and we hope that you now understand what really makes a modal harmony or a modal tonality. We'd also like to let you know and remind you that today's episode is brought to you by viewers like you. Signals Music Live is brought to you by the generous donations of viewers around the world. So thank you, be safe, and we'll see you again next time.